I can taste your words. I can taste your I can taste your words. I can taste your I can taste your words. I can taste
Hello and good afternoon. I am Katie McManus, business strategist and money mindset coach, and I'm here today with Meredith Adams, who's a brilliant copywriter, and she is the owner of Cactus Girl Media. Meredith, thank you so much for being here.
Definitely. Anytime. I'm so excited to chat with you. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Good. Just a little housekeeping. We are going live to both my Facebook accounts, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter or X or whatever it is now. Which, I mean, what a whole shit show that is.
I need to look into this, how to do lives across like all the platforms.
Yeah, no, it's a game changer. It makes life so much easier.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And today we're talking about how to use story in your social media to attract clients.
Yes, which is my favorite thing in the world. Just ever.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because, I think I went through this when I first started, and all of my clients go through this, is they look at their lives and they're like not impressed with what they see. Like, my life is so boring because they've lived, thankfully, a very like typical life, and they've, nothing big and traumatic has happened to them. Like, they haven't gone and conquered the world. They just kind of have gone along, and then something changed and they wanted to do something brave. And they don't see that as an extraordinary moment. And like, it's really hard to figure out how to tell that story. And I'm curious, what's the advice that you give when working with a client who questions if they're interesting enough?
Everyone is so freaking interesting. Oh my God. And there's so many things, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, someone said, sorry, I just got distracted. Everyone is so interesting, and we all go through so much stuff that like it doesn't feel interesting to us necessarily, or it doesn't feel like, how do I explain this? Like, it's just life, this is just like, it's just daily life. And we do so many extraordinary things and overcome so many like extraordinary obstacles that if you told someone else the story, they would be like, holy crap, you're amazing. Like, how did you put up with this? And I'm seeing a lot of this with myself right now because I'm writing I'm writing a book, and it is about the 7 years that I spent in a multi-level marketing commercial cult and all of the abuse. And so it's been really a lot personally, because there's so like just going down this rabbit hole of memories and all this stuff that happened. And like, there was a time when like I was in the hospital, or I had to go to the hospital, and they were like mad at me for like not going to the conference and stuff. And like, like all of this. And all of that at the time felt like, oh, okay, whatever, but like realizing it now and thinking about it now is like, oh, it's absolutely a cult. There's no other word for it. Yeah. These are facts. But yeah, like there's just this was just daily events, daily life. Like, you brush your teeth, your upline abuses you, you make your dinner, someone cuts you off in traffic, like whatever. It is what it is. So I really think that for some people, a lot of it is sitting down and taking time to think about those stories. And that's a lot of what I do with my clients is like I'm big on like deep dive workshops, or like I will sit with someone for 2 hours and just ask them question after question of like, what happened when, what happened with this divorce, or what happened with this job loss, or something, something that obviously like relates to what they want to do now, but and we just go deeper into it. And what did that feel like? And what's coming up for you? And like, how does that feel in your body? And what does it feel like now to be on the other side of that? And what did you learn from it? And so much stuff. So I think that what it boils down to is that there is just so much more to daily life that is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to see it,
Yeah. Well, a couple things come up for me in that is that I think when people start thinking about telling their story, they're like, well, A, it's not interesting. And B, like, do I have to get super vulnerable? Because I think what most people are seeing or have to model after is, the people kind of vulnerability dump on Facebook.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between like what you share on Facebook to people who like generally, from like school or previous jobs or their family members or whatever. It's like grandma's sick. Here's all the details of her illness. Here's the hospital she's at. If you want to go visit her here or visiting hours. Versus like social media, it's like, what does it feel like to be juggling between spending time with an ill relative and doing this thing? And how are you showing up for your clients still?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to share all the nitty gritty details.
Right.
But it's also like the things that are relatable about the human condition.
And that's a big part of it too, is that so in the spring, I took a publishing course, and I said that, so like, I mean, when it comes to, and like, in all honesty, like when it comes to people in MLM cults, my story is super vanilla. Like there are, and even like people that I knew, like people that like I know people that were like put into arranged marriages by their uplines, and like crazy, crazy shit. And then there's all the like, and then there's all the like sensational stuff that you see in like the Lula Rich documentary, like that woman who like lost her house and whatever. And I'm in all these anti-MLM Facebook groups, and like people literally die every day because they like get cancer or something and they refuse treatment for their cancer, and they think that their MLM products are going to save them. And like like those stories are all too common. So like me, like, okay, like I had to go to the hospital because like I have a blood condition, and so I thought that I might be having a blood clot, and I was really scared. I had to go to the hospital. Everything turned out to be fine. They were mad at me, whatever. I went to the conference the next day. Like it's like kind of whatever,
You still went to the conference.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, that's the power that organizations like that can hold over you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was fine. Like I was not like it was kind of a weird thing. Like even when I was like really like even when I was like in critical condition, I did not feel like sick. Like I never felt like like I was just like, I felt fine. Like I felt well and healthy, but like I wasn't at all. Like every doctor would like pull back the curtain, and then they would expect to see someone like just like, on their deathbed, and then they would pull back the curtain and see me just like sitting around, like fiddling on my iPad, like playing around. And I'd be like, hey, what's up?
Right.
And this like look of shock, like what? Like, are you the one? And I even refused to wear, this is a whole other story, but like I even refused to wear the hospital gown. I was like, no, I'm wearing my pajamas.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh
but yeah, and sometimes so those things, so when I was taking that course, I told the instructor that like sometimes I felt like, I wasn't in an arranged marriage. I wasn't, whatever. And I feel like me telling my story is just plain vanilla compared to, and like, am I really going to get like, does anybody really want to read this? Is anybody actually going to give me like a book deal about this, like, story, when they could give the book deal to the person that was in the arranged marriage or whatever. And he told me something that like that really kind of changed the game for me, is that we do, like, obviously, like, in culture, like, we do enjoy these super sensationalized stories, like, and then she died and they lost their house and everything, and it's like, this like doom and gloom kind of like true crime stuff. But the stories that stick with us the most are just about everyday people putting up with shit and being vulnerable through it and living through it and growing through it. And that's like what is actually helpful and impactful to people. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. I
Yeah.
think, an author that I love is Glennon Doyle.
Right.
Yeah. And like she comes from, she had bulimia, she was a drug addict, she was an alcoholic, like, and then she got pregnant and cleaned herself up and married the guy that, got pregnant with, and they had 3 kids. And then, but like there are stories of drug addicts and alcoholics and people who have bulimia who had it way worse.
Yeah.
Whose story could be a way more tumultuous. And yet, like, I don't have kids. I've never had an addiction. But like you can relate so much more to her story.
Exactly.
There's one thing that I'll never forget. Like she was talking about how she was at the playground. She was talking to some moms and she felt like such a fraud because she had like this kind of shitty past.
Yeah.
No one guessed it about her. And she realized that because she was like blonde and she wore designer jeans and she always seemed happy, everyone assumed that she had her shit together.
Yeah.
And I read that and I was like, oh my God, that's why everyone thinks I have my shit together.
I have been having to think about that a lot lately with just like my appearance and how I guess just like naturally present myself to the world and the vibe that I give off and like what people think and stuff, and like kind of just been like, oh, well, if I say this, they're going to think like, this because of the way I look or whatever. And it's like, that is so fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, like an interesting thing is just these moments of realization that we have that changes how we show up to different scenarios. I think we don't credit those moments for being interesting because it's just like, oh, cool. That was just my progression.
Yeah.
But those are the moments that people are like, oh my God, yes, that hits home for me too.
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
Yeah. Let me see.
50 Shades of Grey would have been 1,000
What is this? Hold on.
better had the narrator portion been written better. Oh, it's about the narrator and the delivery of the story.
Yeah.
I've not read 50 Shades of Grey, so I'm gonna let you have that one, Justin.
So I'm curious, when you're working with a client and they're in this moment of doubt and they're like, I'm just not interesting. What are some of the questions that you ask to get their kind of juices flowing?
Usually when I'm trying to think, I don't know. Okay, I have worked with people that they know they have a story, but they don't, like this one woman had experienced financial abuse and for like 12 years or however long she was like with this guy, and she wasn't allowed to like, do this and this and this, or like couldn't leave the house, or like had to ask him for money for everything. And they tell things, they know that that's so like she knew that that's a story. Like she knew that was, it was a big game changer in her life. She was able to leave him. She got her shit together, whatever, like everything is much better now. But she didn't, and it could be that sometimes when people have trauma like that, you have to kind of like step back from it and, just tell it like factually. And so then I'm in there like, okay, like, that is really big. Like, let's hold some space for that. Like, you just told me something that like I'm having an emotional reaction to. Like, I need to take a minute for myself. I can't imagine what you're feeling and telling this. And they're like, it's okay, whatever.
Right.
So like, let's unpack that and kind of like, so why do you feel it's okay? How would you feel if your best friend told you that this happened to them?
Right.
How would you feel if I told you, if I were the one telling you this, like, how
Yeah.
would you, how would you feel? How would you react? And so sometimes it's about getting to those emotions that are hidden for people
Yeah.
because of protection. So that is a challenge that I've had. I've not really had the challenge of someone not thinking they're interesting. I guess no, that's not true. I guess I have, but like that's usually pretty easy to overcome when you just start asking like, okay, well, like, so what made you decide to start this business? Like, what is your reasoning behind that, and what is your, and then like they'll tell me something. They might, we eventually like hit on the thing that's
Right.
really, and then I know what to dig into. So I think it's just a matter of kind of questioning and getting to that thing, asking enough questions to get to that thing, whatever it is, and then zeroing in on the thing and showing them like, okay, well, and then this, like, this is really big. And then when you start talking about that, it's interesting how the doors start opening to, yeah, well, and actually, like, this happened when I was a kid and blah 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 blah. And it's like, whoa 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 whoa. So
Yeah.
now you're telling me that like in your childhood, like, you were primed to experience this, and then like this is why you felt so crappy about yourself that you became a victim of domestic abuse, or whatever it is,
Right.
and now here we are. Yeah, yeah,
It's so funny you're describing this, and I almost wrote a post about this today where it's like, you if you want to start a business, like, be prepared to go into the deep underbelly of all the trauma and all the garbage that is like, happened in your life, because it all comes out.
yeah,
Like anything that you believe about yourself. And actually this is goes with Justin's question. Do you think that fear of judgment comes from negative self-talk? I think it comes from a lot of stuff, but it can also
yeah,
come from trauma and basic beliefs that were taught from very, very young.
yeah, yeah. I think for me, the the fear, the judgment always comes from me. Like, always
Mhm.
comes from that like idiot asshole in my head that's like, well, so like, what do you really do for people? Like what do you really like, why are people paying you for that? Like, what are you really doing for them? Like, blah blah blah. Like, that really just like harsh, like, asshole, like, come on, what the fuck have you ever done with your life? And you just like live in my head doing nothing, like, rent free, like, calm down.
Mhm.
So when you I feel like, so that has always been, and a big thing for me has been like going back and figuring out like whose voice is that actually. And for me it was my parents.
Right.
And which I think it is for many of us, if not
Right.
our parents, then like some other, caretaker, someone like super important in our lives. And so that kind of like, that's when we get into like the inner child healing and like the trauma healing and stuff like that. But then there's also kind of like, I read once that one way to kind of, I guess, like, combat that voice, or that negative self-talk, is to actually like pretend that you have to argue your case in a
Mhm.
court of law.
Yeah.
Like I suck at copyright, I suck at everything I do, I'm never gonna make money. Okay. So now like going in front of a judge saying like, this is why I suck. This is why I will never make money. This is why I will never move forward. And then like kind of using that like Socratic method that they use in law school to
Yeah.
like uncover these questions. Okay, well, what evidence do you have for that?
Right.
And then it's like, well, nothing. So that's been something that's been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because the whole mantra and like manifestation thing, there's a similar practice in a positive way where for me, like, mantras never seem to work.
Yeah.
Repeating the same sentence over and over, like, it doesn't have any meaning to me. And this is
Yeah.
actually really this is really common with people who have ADHD and who have echolalia, because we're just repeating stuff all the time anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And so it doesn't have any significance. And yet you can flip it on its head. Like if you say you're going to make $1 million next year, you can ask why. Why am I going to make $1 million next year? Well, I'm going to work really hard. Why? Oh, well, I'm going to restructure my packages to do blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, why? Well, I have a new marketing plan. I'm going to be doing this, 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 and this. Why? So it's like, it's very evidence-based of what are you building towards? And do you actually have all the things that are going to help you get to that big goal?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's something I've been thinking a lot about myself lately, because I'm like, I restructured everything. I had like, I mean, you know what I went through last year with copywriting, and from the asshole in our head is, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not any New York Times critic. Who's that guy on like that like Top Chef or something who's known? Is it Gordon Ramsay? He's known for being like
he's the worst. He's so mean.
Yeah. Like,
you know who I would love to have as my critic is Tim Gunn. Tim Gunn from Project Runway. He's a fashion. He's a fashion guy. He works at Parsons, but he's always like, "Are you sure about this?
Yeah,
make it work." Like,
I like that. Yeah. I like that approach because it kind of opens up a conversation. Like, well, here's why I chose this.
Yeah.
And, you know, what are your thoughts on it? You know?
This approach is always, well, I'm just concerned that X, Y, and Z will blah, 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 blah. So it gives them some information, some data to play with.
Yeah.
Right. And then he leaves it to them. You know, he doesn't get micromanagey about it.
Whereas Gordon Ramsay is just a huge bully. Like, he just is there to make fun of people, unless it's children. He's super nice to children.
So
Who
nice.
knows why? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so funny. But anyway, back to last year.
So I mean, things since I left NYU, like things have been very like I've had months of like huge success, and then months of like not so much success. And I rebuilt everything in the spring. Like I started from I had months like January and February where it was like probably like, I mean, I probably did like 20 sales calls, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is exactly what I need. Like, this is like, you just described my dream program. This is so cool. You know, but thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
Like it, and at first it was like, okay, whatever, like things have been going so well, like there's like a, you know, there's bound to be some like, you know, something to push against, but then it was like over and over. So then I was like, okay, there's a problem, like I have to do some work on the niche. So I started doing that whole process and kind of disappeared for like a month or so while I was working on that. And then came and rebranded everything, redid my website, dropped, you know, like all of that, started putting out new like rebranded the content, rebranded I mean, it's the same program basically, but it just has a different name and is like, you know, kind of set up a little bit differently, and started putting that out there. And so, you know, there's a lot of like fears and doubts that come with like, you know, especially being in like your first couple of years of business, like, oh my God, is this going to work? But I keep telling myself and leaning into this really strong internal faith that I have that like, yeah, this is going to work. Like, I don't really know why I feel that way. I mean, I know that I'm really good at what I do, and I know that I'm really impactful and that I have a lot to say. And this is like, it truly feels like I'm following the path that's meant for me. You know, the logistics of like, you know, how that works is going to obviously be a little bit of a learning curve, but it's just like this tapping into this really, really strong intuition that this is what's right. And yeah, like I work my ass off. Like I market myself every day. I talk to clients every day. You know, and that is all like the compound effect. There's definitely a compound effect when it comes to your business and your marketing, really.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I was reading something. Do you ever like just go down a TikTok wormhole and then end up buying shit because you're like, oh, I think I need that.
Of course. Yes.
So I bought this massive book, the Joseph Murphy Treasury.
Wow.
Which is a little religious-y for me, but it has some really interesting points. But one of them is that, like, while Babe Ruth has like had a record of the most home runs, and I know nothing about sports, so just forgive me. We focus on that. We don't focus on the fact that he also had the highest strikeout average.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he just had more at bats than anyone else.
Yeah.
Right? But he didn't give up. And that's something that, like, as business owners, we only really see people's successes.
Yeah.
We only see like them bragging about how much money they're making and how many clients they're serving and all this stuff. And also, like, we're not seeing all those moments where the program didn't land.
Yeah.
He had 20 sales calls and not a single yes. Like, you know, this happened to all of us, and yet we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really powerful thing to bring into your marketing, is like, not everything was just sunshine and roses. I failed, I failed a lot. TikTok made me buy it. Yeah.
Actually, Justin had a really interesting question, but it was long, so I wanted to make sure we had a moment for it. To the point about being a good copywriter, take into account that for all the things people have rave about ChatGPT, the ability to write even decent copy still eludes ChatGPT. I'll leave that creative skill to a human. 100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. ChatGPT is good for when you're stuck in your mind of like, there's just like this one sentence or this one point that you're trying to make, and you're struggling about like how to put it together. Like, you don't have to spend that mental energy on that anymore. Like, you can just go to ChatGPT and say like, I'm trying to say this. Can you write it? And it'll give you like 10 different options. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Right. Well, it's funny because I tried to do that early on with, my tagline, stop being a weenie and start your business already. And I forget the prompt I gave it, but it was like, I'm sorry, I can't do inappropriate jokes. And I'm like, no, it's not an inappropriate joke. It's about people who are afraid of doing the thing.
Okay, well, here's a funny story about something that just happened to me with ChatGPT, and I don't know if I've been like put on a list now, but still. All right, so right now, like, I'm writing my book, which is like a memoir, thought leadership. I really want, I hate that MLMs prey on women who are already stretched so thin, and they're all and most of these women are already part of a system that is set up against them. They're working in jobs that keep them broke and exhausted, and are dealing with, they're single moms, and it's just a completely broken system. That I hate this, because it's like the MLM is like really a wolf in sheep's clothing, because they're like, we're, like, gonna help you with all of that, but it's really just like making it worse and perpetuating, so that's one of my main points. And then pointing to the idea, kind of like more of a thought leadership standpoint, that, if you can learn sales skills, if you can learn basic sales skills, you don't need a degree, you don't need anything fancy. But you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, either working a job in sales, which those tend to be pretty good jobs for people that need flexibility, because you are, you set up your own calendar. And then, and then there's, of course, like entrepreneurship, which, like, if you are a business owner, you are a salesperson primarily. Mm-hmm. So, there's that too. So that's what I'm working on right now. But once that's finished, I have a lot of ideas to like write novels about like true crime within MLMs. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about like, how could you use an MLM for like dealing drugs or human trafficking or whatever? And like, I put this into ChatGPT, like, could an MLM be just, could you use human trafficking disguised in an MLM. And ChatGPT came up with all this, like, I cannot condone this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, they're like, the feds are coming.
Oh my God. Well, this is okay. So, side note, funny story. There's a place in Santa Cruz, there was a place in Santa Cruz that was right along Route 17. And if you're not familiar with Santa Cruz, like you have to go on this super windy, kind of illegal highway. Like it violates 37 different highway regulations that, the Board of Transportation in the United States dictates. Anyway, there is this Mexican restaurant that opened up kind of like off one of the exits, and they were selling drugs. But they were selling cocaine. But the code word when someone wanted cocaine, or like, I guess like an 8-ball, was they would order chicken nachos, which is a really dumb thing, because if you're in California and you're a Mexican restaurant, like, and you have chicken nachos on the menu, people are gonna order chicken nachos.
Right. That's a normal thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe there's like a certain like shade of lipstick that is like contraband stuff, and people order it and don't realize it, and they end up getting this thing, and then it like traps them into it because they get caught with it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and when I was in it, people were selling, like, you were like lauded if you could sell, like, if you could upsell something. So like there was like a skin cream that was like $200, and people would be like, yeah, I sold it to this woman for like $500 or something. And like, and it was like, you could control your pricing. Like you could yes. Just
I've never heard it called that.
Kind of people that like are on. So LinkedIn is not my primary audience, like, platform at all, but I need to start utilizing it more. Katie and I were talking about this the other day, and if you're the kind of person that's on LinkedIn, then these are my people.
If you're not connected with Meredith, go and connect with her now.
Please, yes. Yes. After this, I need to just start cross-posting my stuff to, I mean, I do sometimes cross-post to LinkedIn, but it's like, that's not enough. You have to like put the time in to build the platform. And
and also like the stuff that works on other platforms, like sometimes it doesn't land on LinkedIn. It has to be completely different. Yeah.
So I don't know. But that's coming soon. But so skin cream sold for like, $200. So what if like you sold the skin cream or the laundry detergent and say, I sold this laundry detergent for $700. I'm just a really freaking awesome salesperson. And the laundry, like the wholesale price for the laundry detergent, maybe like $20.
Right.
But you sold it like they're going to be like, oh, wow, like you're an amazing salesperson. Can you come speak at our conference? Like, but you're a drug dealer.
Right.
Right.
Well, and what I love, I mean, to relate it back to the topic for today is like, even just talking through these ideas that we have, like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Just talking about the creative process and how you think through things, and like, how you think someone could get away with something.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, when clients are worried about getting too vulnerable, how do you tackle that with them?
You really have to, first of all, I really try to like screen who I'm working with. Like I really want to attract people that have done the work. Like I am not a life coach. Like if you are going to be wishy-washy in terms of like, oh, but I can't talk about this, or like blah, 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 or like I have a difficult time working with people that are like super private. That's just hard for me, that, can't deal with like exposing, like showing a picture of their living room or whatever, like, and my mom's like that. She would never like post a picture of, like, she asked me to take a picture of one of our cats down because it was on her pillow, like on her bed. And she was like, that's my bed. Those are my pillows. Like, I don't want that. And I'm like, can you make this make sense for me? Like, I don't understand. It's a fucking pillow. So I do try to like screen those out because there's a certain amount of like, I don't have the skill set to be able to, like, I'm not your therapist, you know,
Right. Right.
but there is, you know, when people do have trauma around like, this thing happened to me, and people, you know, so I had a lady the other day who she was her husband physically abused her and he was arrested, and it was like a pretty small town, so this was like news, like they had him, like the cops had him like handcuffed on the front lawn, and like
Right.
she was standing there, you know, she was like sitting on the front porch and like watching this all happen, and so it was like this hugely like horrible embarrassing thing, and everyone at work kind of turned their back on her, or she felt that they turned her back on her, and they started just like excluding her from the group and like not, you know, including her and stuff. And you know, I said that most likely these people were, it made them uncomfortable, like it made, they did not have the resources to deal with what you dealt with. It was just
Right.
so fucking real and traumatic for them,
Right.
and they're crappy people, and I'm sorry that that happened. And she was very like, she had been, up until now, she's decided to be brave now, but up until now she has had a lot of fear around sharing that story. She was like, well, why would I share, I you know, why would that be interesting to people, like why would that, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, like, and I told her too, I was like, if you're up for this, you, my advice would be to write the story, like talk about how your business, you know, you this happened, people turned their backs on you, you started your business, and like, you know, I would just write like a super, it doesn't even have to be written well, just like talk about what happened, share that on the internet, share that in any entrepreneurial Facebook group on the internet, and
Right.
people are going to be so amazed, like so amazed by you, like it's going to be such an uplifting experience, I guarantee you, that all of that trauma is going to go away.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
You know, what blows me away. So, you know, I've been helping people start their businesses for 4 years now. And there are only like less than 5 people I can name who don't come from some kind of trauma
Yeah,
that kicks them into starting their business.
yeah.
It's almost like a point on the healing journey.
Mm,
You know, it's like this declaration of independence.
yeah,
Claiming your power. It's owning your story. It's really owning like everything that you have to contribute to the world,
yeah,
and naming there's value to this. There's value to me and there's value to this, and not submitting. I think also there's a lot of workplace trauma and toxicity
oh yeah,
similar to this,
yeah,
that like you're no longer willing to put up with it,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and you're never going to put yourself in a situation where you are, you know, submitting to that kind of situation
yeah.
ever.
Yeah. That's funny because as you were talking about that, like I was thinking like, so the very first business, so I started my first business
Mhm.
12 years ago when I
Mhm.
first moved to New York, and it was a tourism company, and I did food and tasting tours in the ethnic enclaves all around New York City, even
Mhm.
including Staten Island. Because there's an amazing Sri Lankan community in Staten Island. And
Oh,
that's like,
interesting.
to this day, that's like some of the best food I've ever had. Um,
Yeah, Justin, he has a rule of 3 for situation. I think this goes back to who you were talking about before. Is all the people, how do you sort through them? I think that's all great advice, Justin. Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, sorry, the Sri Lankans.
Yeah. So, best, we've got to go. We've got to go to well, you know what? Let's just go to Sri Lanka. Why do we want to go to Staten Island? We're entrepreneurs now. Anyway, so I was thinking as you were telling that story, I was like, well, I didn't start that business out of any like major trauma. I just didn't want to spend my life like behind a desk. And then when you said workplace trauma, I was like, oh yeah, like because I had a boss that would like call me if it was like she would like call the office phone at like 8:01 to like see if I answered, and then like text me, and there were these train tracks that I had to cross to get to the building, and it was like okay, like calm down. Like, like I've never understood like what happens at this time that means that like I have to like we have to be sitting in our desks. Like I don't understand. Like does an albatross come by and like drop a message?
There's a bomb that has to be deactivated every
Yeah.
day at 8:01.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And if you're not there, the whole
Yeah.
building goes up.
Because if that's the case, that's pretty fucking important. I'll be there. I'll be there at 6. I'll be waiting.
Right. Yeah.
Like that guy in Lost that had to push the button every 45 minutes.
I never watched Lost.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
Yeah,
It was such a good show.
Oh
But
my
yeah, they had this was like it was like a psychological experiment. Nothing happened if he didn't push the button, but he had been living on this island in this bunker for years and he had to push a button every 45 minutes or else like the island would blow up, the world would end or whatever. And so finally like they get him out of this of his bunker and he's like, I have to push the button. I have to push the button. If I don't, then finally like the time comes and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God, it was all a lie. But yeah, like that's not necessarily like trauma, but it was annoying. And I didn't want to be tired all the time. I didn't want to be like stressed all the time for shit that doesn't really matter at the end of the day, shit that's like not important. And so I think that really was what it was. And then I was like, and I just started thinking like, what is something that I could do that I would actually like care about that is my thing and not someone else's, and where I can control my schedules to where like, if I work better in the evenings, then I can work in the evenings or whatever. Like, why do I have to participate in this act, this like, thing that's like set up that's like, why can't I think for myself and like do my own thing and like come up with my own idea? So that was really like where it came from in the beginning. And then and then from there like I mean I really had like no idea what I was doing. And it was such a different time, like even just 12 years ago, like Instagram had not been invented yet.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe, or I think it had started, but it was like very fringe. Like no one was using Instagram. There weren't Facebook groups. There was not, I mean, I'm sure there were like business coaches, but there were not
to the degree that there are now.
Yeah.
And also they train on very different things.
Yeah.
And also I don't think there were that many people. I mean, coaching really wasn't that big of a thing back then.
Right.
It's like I remember hearing one of my mentors, like 5 years ago say that, just in the last 5 years, he'd stopped getting asked when he went through airport security or international, portals. That sounds like it's like a fantasy word. But anyway, like, border control, like stopped asking him like, oh, are you a sports coach? Like, do you coach soccer?
Yeah.
Because they genuinely hadn't heard of coaching.
No idea. Right. Yeah. So yeah, like it was such a different environment and I had no idea what I was doing, and the resources weren't really there to, to point me in the right direction. And I don't know that even if there had been, that I would have realized like, oh, that's a resource that can help me. I remember Yelp was really big back then. Yelp was like, if you want your business to do well, like you have to be on Yelp reviews. Like that was it. And so like Yelp had pretty good marketing. Like you could pay them to come in and like shoot a whole video about you and like make it look really good. And I knew people that did kind of similar things to me that like had a lot of luck with that. But by and large, I had no clue what I was doing. And so that made me but I was excited and I was, and I was just, like I realized I was realizing that I liked the business part, the part of running a business much more than I liked like the tour guide part. And so that kind of made me like a prime target for MLM. And so that was then like that took over like the next 7 years of my life. And then me starting Cactus Girl Media and becoming a brand storyteller and a writer has really been like, I think the driving force behind that has been like the trauma that talking about the trauma that I experienced, reclaiming my story, helping others reclaim their stories, and just a big fuck you to like this, these systems that exist to hold us back and to hurt us and to, keep us from, I think about these women all the time. So when I worked at NYU, I would take the commuter train, the Long Island Railroad into Penn Station every day. And and it was like, I mean, it's different from the subway because it's like, it comes like twice per hour. So you're either going to be on like the 8:30 or the, whatever. So there were all of these women and I saw them every day and we would talk, and over time you just got to know people. And I think about them all the time. They were all single moms. They had little to no support from their, baby daddies. And they all had like crap jobs kind of, like, and I had a crap job too. And they were just trying to, because it's like, if you have all of these things stacked against you in your life, how are you able to overcome and like put forth the mental energy that you need to have like, a real, like a standout career? That's why white males, sorry, Justin, are, like up until now, I think that's changing now, but like, that's what the corporate looks the way that it does for most people. And, so these women were, administrative assistants and whatever. And they were just so exhausted all the time. They would, and if they weren't sleeping, like sometimes we would chat, if it was like, a morning where you had more like a nice summer morning where the sun was out and you had a little bit more energy than normal or whatever, then you would chat and that's when we would get to know each other. But most of the time you would just like slug onto the train and they would sit down and sleep for those 18 minutes that it took to get to Penn Station. And then, or they would shop on their phones. And I had a really big over shopping habit at the time, which was like one of the first things that I had to overcome. And it's like, when you are in that position where you have no room in life, like you have no wiggle room, there's nothing for you, ordering that $40 pair of shoes or like whatever, like just for that serotonin boost of like, when I get home, these bright yellow shoes are going to be on my doorstep. And that is like what I am living for right now.
It's interesting you say that because that's actually a trauma response. It's actually like I got a trauma of money certification this past year, and it's legitimately like spending money spending $40 when you have $80 in your account.
Yeah.
And you're stressed about how you're going to pay for dinner and groceries for the week. It's actually a trauma response because like it's a self-soothing.
Yeah.
It's like the only thing to self-soothe because you don't understand like the amount of stress that you're actually experiencing from the financial stress.
Yeah.
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 It's really common. It's like, it's why when you're stressed out about money sometimes and you have a bunch of groceries in the refrigerator, you'll still go and like order takeout for $55.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a self-soothing thing.
Yeah.
All that anxiety and bad feelings that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And honestly, and that was kind of like the first step on my journey of becoming a business owner. But I wanted to get out of that cycle. I looked around and I was like, I don't have anything holding me back from fighting against this. It's just my willpower. So I was like, so I cleaned up my finances. I actually stopped taking the commuter train because that was like a $200 expense that I was like, that money can go to something else, that can go
Right.
towards debt.
Right.
And I really like took radical responsibility for just getting my finances in order, and then, you know, getting my life in order. And this was even like, this was kind of like my last couple of years of like MLM, where like I wasn't really doing anything, you know, I would just kind of like go to the conferences, show up, be a complete rebel. Like after a while, like they wanted us to get up at like we would get there on Friday, and the biggest thing that I looked forward to at the conferences after a while was like the nap. Like we would leave early Friday morning, and then we would get there and like check into the hotel early and get to take this like big long nap. Some people had to be there at noon, but most people didn't have to be there until like the evening. So you just had this time to like take a nap, go to the pool, hang out with your friends. And that was like my number one reason. Like that was like I'm here for the nap. Like it's just the best part of the conference. So yeah, and I just got to be like a huge rebel. Like one time I think I was like legitimately like not feeling well or something. And so like this place that we were staying at it was like it was in Ocean City, Maryland, and it was like these beach like condos on the water. And this one condo that we were staying at, like I was in kind of like the loft, and the other girls were like in the only other room. It was like the loft, living room, and kitchen, and then like basement rooms. So they were freezing in the basement and kept turning up the heat, but of course the heat like went up to the loft. So I was like, it's literally 95 degrees. So like I did not sleep well, was not feeling well the next day. And I was like, you know what, I'm really not like, I really can't this morning. So, and nothing happened. Like nothing happened to me. Like when I got there this afternoon, they were like, oh my gosh, like, so sorry. Like that really sucks. You know, I was like, wait a minute, I could do this every time. Like, so then that like, you know, just slowly evolved into me and like my downlines, like sitting on the dock at the same beach condos smoking pot, like like truly not giving a crap about anything. And that was the last conference that I ever went to, because that was in January of 2020. And I went out with a bang. Oh my gosh, why am I talking about this? What was my point?
I'm not sure, but okay, so final advice you have to someone who's starting to tell their story.
Just tell it in honestly, like if you're up for it, like do what I was telling, you know, that one lady who had the trauma of like her, you know, her husband hitting her, getting arrested, her coworkers didn't know how to deal with it, and so they froze her out. Go tell that story, whatever it is, in any entrepreneurial group on Facebook, honestly. And you're going to get a huge amount of support. You are going to get, I mean, yeah, there are going to be a lot of people in your DMs that are like, maybe better.
Yeah.
What was the last conference, Justin? I'm just really curious.
It's funny. I come from sales, and the sales conferences you go to, like talk about drugs, talk about illegal. Oh my God. And anyway.
Well, this was like, so the MLM that I was in was like really, really conservative and very controlling, with like women had to wear dresses. Women had to wear, like, you could not, like, there was a standard that you could not deviate. And that included no cursing, no alcohol, and no drugs. Right. So then there was me. And even from the very beginning, I was just like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, Justin's channel partners in Vegas. I can see that totally.
Is that like a sales conference?
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah. So channel partners are typically like the salespeople that work with the salespeople to sell to the other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were saying about the woman share to the Facebook groups.
Yeah, just share it. Like, and honestly, that is easier. Sharing it to strangers that you don't know is easier than sharing it to like on your personal profile page. Right. You know, That's how I made a lot of like my first contacts in business, is that I would go to Facebook groups and talk about like, just tell stories about like how much I hated my job and how much they were taking advantage of me and stuff like that. And I like made like a lot of good points, met a lot of good people. And I mean, yes, like be careful, because there will be a lot of like leeches in your DMs, like trying to twist that into like, work with me, like I'm the answer or whatever. So, be careful of that, but like just do it, just start the conversation and don't be a weenie.
Yeah. Well, and also to that point, I find, there's this is an active problem in my life share that will get those leeches. And then there's also like, I just want to share my story of where I come from and like all the stuff. Just in case, like you are in this, like know that there's a way out.
Yeah.
And know that, I got through it. If I got through it, you can get through it.
Right.
Right. That puts it into like a more separate thing. So if those leeches do show up, like they can't, like it's a weird ask for them to say, work with me, because it's obvious.
Well, they'll show up no matter what.
It really depends on how you frame it.
Yeah.
And how well they read it.
Right.
But anyway, final note from Justin. He's been to Thailand, Australia, and Tijuana, and he was not prepared for Vegas.
Damn.
I believe it. Meredith, we're almost at time. Thank you so much for being
super fun. Yes.
It's so
definitely.
fun.
All right.
And for everyone who's tuned in, I can't speak today. Rohit and Justin and Javi and LinkedIn user whose name is not showing up, and everyone who showed up and wasn't in the comments. Thank you for being here. I hope
thank you, Justin. It was nice meeting you.
I felt like we should have probably just brought Justin into the live. Anyway, I'm Katie McManus, business strategist and money mindset coach. This is Meredith Adams from Cactus Girl Media. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all soon.
All right. Bye. Have fun.